In this video, I'm going to show you how to graph transformations of the reciprocal function y equals 1 over x. In particular, we're going to be looking at vertical and horizontal translations. So here we want to graph two functions. We want to graph y equals 1 over x plus 3 and also y equals 1 over x minus the square root of 2. And we're also going to draw in the vertical and horizontal asymptotes with dashed lines. Let's focus on this first function to begin with. So y equals 1 over x plus 3. Well, we've got a graph of y equals 1 over x, so it's just the plus 3 part that we need to think about. So plus 3 is a vertical translation. Plus 3 means we translate it 3 units up. So all the points in this graph are being translated 3 units up. So how do we draw this then? Well, why don't we think about what happens to the asymptotes? So first of all, the horizontal asymptote here, y equals 0, that's moved 3 units up to y equals 3. So why don't we go ahead and draw that? We'll get our straight edge here and we'll draw a asymptote that's moved 3 units up using a dashed line, and we'll label that as y equals 3. And then how about our vertical asymptote here? So if we move that 3 units up, well, it's still just the same kind of vertical asymptote. But just for clarity's sake, let's draw over it again in dashed red. So again, we're having the same asymptote. X is equal to 0. And we'll draw it here. And again, just label it x equals 0. And okay, so let's put our function in here now. So the function just runs around the corners of the asymptotes. So instead of running from the black asymptotes here, now it's running through the red asymptotes. So let's go ahead and plot that. So that looks something like this and something like this. All right, great. So there is our graph of y equals 1 over x plus 3. Okay, now let's focus on y equals 1 over x but minus square root of 2. So how do we deal with that minus square root of 2 translation here? This is another vertical translation. This time we're going down by square root of 2 units. So let's see what happens to our asymptotes. Again, the horizontal asymptote at y equals 0, that is going to go down by square root of 2 units. So let's draw something that is down a little bit. So let's put it down here. This will be our new asymptote. And we'll label that with y equals negative square root of 2. And how about our vertical asymptote? So that just, if we move it down, it just stays the same because it's just a straight up and down line. But just to make things clear, let's draw over it. So our vertical asymptote stays the same, still x equals 0. And now let's draw our function. So again, it goes around the corners of the asymptote here. So there's a corner and it's going to go around here. Just a rounded off corner here. And then the same idea on the other side, a rounded off corner here. And there we go. There is our graph of y equals 1 over x minus root 2. Here's another example which is similar, but now we're dealing with horizontal translations. We want to graph y equals 1 over the quantity x minus 3 and y equals 1 over the quantity x plus 2. Again, we're going to draw our vertical and horizontal asymptotes with dashed lines. And let's focus on this first one here. So remember, horizontal translations, that has to do with what goes on the x here. So it's x minus 3. And horizontal translations are the ones that are kind of counterintuitive. If we have x minus 3, that means we're actually moving x3 in the positive direction. So the x coordinates all move 3 to the right. Okay, so let's draw what happens to our asymptotes. So the vertical asymptote here gets moved 3 units to the right. So let's draw it again, going to the right. So here it will be. This will be the asymptote. Originally it was x equals 0. Now it's 3 to the right. So x equals 3. And our Our horizontal asymptote here, well, when we move it 3 units to the right, it just stays the same because it's a flat horizontal line. And so let's just draw it for the sake of clarity. We'll draw it over our original asymptote, and it stays as y equals 0. And now we can go ahead and plot our function. It's a rounded corner, so let's make that rounded corner around the asymptotes here, and another rounded corner around these two asymptotes here. And there we go. There's our graph of y equals 1 over x minus 3. The next example is y equals 1 over x plus 2. So again, this plus 2 is what is controlling the horizontal translation. And again, horizontal translations are a little counterintuitive. The plus 2 actually moves the x coordinates in the negative direction. So we're going to the left 2. So let's take our vertical asymptote and move it left 2 units. It'll be right about here. Let's draw that in. So our new asymptote, we're taking the asymptote x equals 0, moving it to the left 2 units, so x equals negative 2. And our horizontal asymptote here, since it's just going straight horizontal, we move it 2 units to the left and it's still the same. It's not affected by that at all. So we'll just draw it over the original one. Stays the same, just y equals 0. And now we're ready to go ahead and plot our function. So let's go ahead and make the rounded corners around the asymptotes here. So here's a rounded corner here, and then one more rounded corner on the other side. Goes kind of like this. Great, so there is our function, y equals 1 over x plus 2. There is its graph. Here's a final example. We want to graph y equals 1 over the quantity x plus 4 and all that plus root 3. Okay, so this is a horizontal and a vertical translation. And again, we're going to indicate these vertical and horizontal asymptotes with dashed lines. So let's think about where these vertical and horizontal asymptotes move according to these translations. So why don't we do the horizontal translation first, the plus 4 over here, because that's a little bit counterintuitive. So let's get the hard thing out of the way first. So plus 4, x plus 4 actually moves the x coordinates to the left 4 in the negative direction. Remember, the horizontal translations are the counterintuitive ones. So that takes this vertical asymptote, moves it left 4, so at x equals negative 4. So let's go ahead and draw roughly what that looks like. So here's our asymptote, and we'll label that at x equals negative 4. And our horizontal asymptote here is not affected by that, because if we move it left 4 units, it's just the same as it was originally. Okay, now let's look at that plus root 3. This is a plus root 3 is a vertical translation, so that brings everything up by root 3 units, brings all the y coordinates up root 3 units. So what changes here is this horizontal asymptote at y equals 0, that changes to y equals root 3. It's moved up by root 3 units. So let's go ahead and draw roughly what that looks like then. So that'll be this asymptote here. That'll be y equals root 3. And so now we've got the asymptotes. The vertical asymptote is not affected by that. Bring it up root 3, it's just the same. We've got our asymptotes and we're ready to plot our function. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll just plot it as the rounded corners around the asymptotes here. So one of the rounded corners is right here. And then the other rounded corner is going to be right here. And that's going to be our function, y equals 1 over x plus 4 and plus root 3. In this video, we focused on horizontal and vertical transformations of function y equals 1 over x. In the future, though, we'll also learn how to graph reflections of this function.